Hello there, this is Warpath 1985 speaking, and today's second day of the 12 Days of War, I shall be discussing the Transformers Series 86 Slag / Slug with Daniel at Wiki, and also Series 86 Sludge. Now, both of these figures were pretty rarely available for the most part, compared to Grimlock, who was generally much harder to find overall. Because, well, he's Grimlock. For Sludge and Slag, which technically also Slug, varies typically, but both is the same character really. But generally, they were readily available for the most part. However, in the case of Slag, he became really hard to find after he sold out from Hasbro Pulse, which was like the last time you could get him, I believe, because I think he sold out everywhere else. So since I believe very recently, until he did get a release like last year, he's been very hard to find. For Sludge, also the same thing coming with him. However, his ability was a lot more different, mostly because Sludge came with a really bad QC such as the design failure, where all his ratchets were incredibly, more or less, just really flawed and very loose. Unlike other figures where he used very hard, quickly ratchets, for Sludge he used soft ratchets, and because of that, all of his figures, or mostly just any figure of Sludge that came from Studio Series from, I believe, 2022, 2023, were pretty much completely defective. They were still pretty good, mind you, it's just that most of them really couldn't stand up that well. However, I really like future re-releases of the figure did fix it. However, I'm not really sure. Especially since we're getting a new G2 figure of that Sludge, I would assume they probably fix it by then. Unfortunately, I'm not sure, because that figure hasn't been released yet, along with Swoop, G2 Swoop. So, besides that, for both of the characters, the G1 context of any design that shares G1, or especially part of the G1 universe and other alternate universe, etc. They both appeared in the G1 Season 1 cartoon. However, they were, I believe, separated into two different groups, I believe. Unless I'm incorrect. Actually, no. Sorry. Both of them and Grimlock appeared in the same episode. It was like SS86 Dinobots, can't remember. In Season 1. And generally, they appear throughout Season 1 with the other Dinobots later on, afterwards, with Snarl and Swoop. However, they would be a lesson further on, especially in Season 3, or they would still be used for the most part. So would also pretty much apply to Headmasters and beyond. But so far, really, in the more modern media, becomes a Dreamwave and Devil's Due, same would also apply. However, Sludge would pretty much be relegated to like a background status for the most part, and in other cases, especially in IW, Slag, Slug, whatever you really can call him, I resist for Slag, would be pretty much the primary dialogue character for a while, besides Grimlock, obviously, and would generally serve as the team's leader, I believe correctly, from the IW after Grimlock left the team. Because I can't remember what exactly happened, but generally that's basically what was going on. And also Sludge would sometimes, in other instances, would be killed off in other comic books and also in shows like Machinima. So even in Machinima's Primal Trilogy cartoon or whatever, he was killed off. However, might be correct by that, because I'm not sure. Because last time I really saw that show was when it came out back in 2018. So yeah, it's been a while since I saw it. And obviously that would be pretty much it for Sludge and Slag. They would get other appearances later on, with manga, etc. And obviously, more recently, the whole team all together would appear in a special for Cyberverse. However, So when I talk about Cyberverse, we talk about just G1 and G1 adjacent things. Doesn't really count for this review, unfortunately. Even though I do find that to be a really good special, nonetheless. Besides that, the toys themselves. I'll first talk about Slag first, with obviously down with Wiki, and hopefully he doesn't collapse. Sludge, he's like slowly but surely falling over. Whatever. So, first we're talking about Daniel Wiki, who is this little main figure here. Now Daniel is pretty much the same figure as Wheelie overall, both articulation and also using the same fingernail ports. However, he does have technically a little less like shoulder articulation. However, he doesn't have a waist rotation, oddly enough. You believe so? But no, he doesn't. Now obviously no, since in the movie he doesn't really move the actual helmet around, it's just tied to the centerpiece, so yeah, I guess it's accurate in a sense. However, curious for a little comparison here. Here is Daniel with Spike. That was included with a Buzzword Bumblebee like Core Class 2-pack. It's like a Micromaster sized exosuit figure. And it was the only time this figure was ever really released. And it has much less articulation, however, it does get the job done, if you're curious. That's all articulation you get. However, unlike the Daniel figure, it can technically transform into the little, like, car mode, technically. Which is pretty cool. You would get like another version of like Exosuit Spike in the Studio Series 86 toy line. That was more like sized to the scale of this Exosuit with Daniel. But however, I do not own that figure, unfortunately. However, when it comes to the figure of Slag, he does come with a blaster, not his sword. Because if you recall correctly from a Grimlock review, if you wanted to have his sword, you had to have like gotten the comic book version of Grimlock. There's Slag's gun. It's pretty much like a whole like solid piece, I believe. It might be like another clamshell piece, two pieces glued together. However, I'm not really sure. But for the figure's articulation, mind you, is pretty good overall. So he has hinged and ratcheted shoulders, bicep cut, double jointed elbows, wrist rotation, upwards and downwards hand articulation due to the transformation. Same goes for the head because of transformations panel, and also the head is also on a ball joint, which the ball joint alternating the head can be better accessed if you move the Triceratops head upwards. For the legs, they're ratcheted as well. Very limited in back due to the kibble. Same also applies with the waist rotation, which is not ratcheted. Same goes for the thigh cut. However, Slag does have a very deep knee bend, which is double jointed due to the transformation. The ankle articulation is also very good, but it is hard to access due to the tab here, but it can go out pretty far as well. The last point of articulation I'd like to mention before talking about Sludge would be Slag's wings, which can be hinged outwards and inwards due to the transformation. So, for Sludge, once again, due to the weird circumstances with this figure, he does have really loose ratchet joints, as you can see here. And might add, this is a problem with all figures that were from this first release of Sludge. I believe like the second release did fix it, but once again, I'm not really sure. But generally, all figures of Sludge, from my knowledge, have this problem. But generally, Sludge's articulation is pretty much the same as Slag. He also has his rocket launcher / gun, which my camera's not focusing that well on it. But yeah, here it is. Same case here. Because I'm paint chipping due to a blast effect. But yeah, it's a very large rocket launcher. Unfortunately, due to the QC of the figure, articulation-wise, he is pretty compromised. However, he does have the same head articulation as Slag. However, the ball joint at the neck is very, very tight. You see the figure keeps falling over. He does have about a 90-degree bend at the knee, calf cut, and waist rotation. Very nice ankle tilt. And a split as well. Pretty much that can do as well for Slag. Hinged shoulders, which are not ratchet this time. Well, maybe just because of the release, but they're ratcheted forward. In comparison with Grimlock, which were ratchet, I believe. I'm not sure. I kind of confuse these figures, so I took this print a lot. But generally, he does have almost a double jointed bend at the elbow, a bicep cut. The wings can move outwards and inwards to the transformation. Sludge does have wrist rotation as well, and inwards and upwards at the wrist as well on this little panel here due to the transformation. Now for Slag's transformation, it's both very simple, but also like Grimlock's is very complex. However, due to the fact that this is pretty early on with the Dinobots, he does have the standard kind of like, not necessarily QC joints, but design flaws. Mainly with the tail, because you have to really just like force it in there. That will also pop off by itself. It's unfortunate to do that, but oh well, I guess. We have this transformation, the point where the chest claps inwards. This would be seen with future Dinobot figures as well. Swoop. Next time as well. Also, yeah, after that, you just collapse these legs in. Finish them up, just cross one down. There we go. Squeeze those in, like so. So to tail in. It's usually the hardest part for me, just because you have to get everything together. And with that, we have Slag in his Triceratops mode. Very small, very compact, and very nice looking. You also can store the blaster in the back, like so. And when it comes to Daniel, you can just put him in the back like so. And there we go. That is Slag. He does have Bass Effect port here as well, particularly Peg. And also his mouth can open as well. His legs are also articulated. Which is a very nice touch. Now, here comes the messy part. That's with Sludge. So Sludge's transformation works very similar to that of Slag, but it's very, very like complex, and it's kind of in a good way, in the sense that its complexity is both like very intriguing, fun, etc. However, due to that, it is just a lot. However, I do really like his leg transformation as very smooth, and I just adore how essentially these parts extend outwards and pretty much explode from his front part of his calves. Oh, sorry, yeah, calves. Like, it's so interesting, to say the least. Even if it's really like not flaw, but just a lot to deal with. So rotate that. Again, it's very hard to do all this behind the camera. So that. Upwards like so. And this should all like collapse together and form like and form like the lower half of the tail section, technically the stomach. To like really push it in there and squeeze the legs forward like that. So again, like in that position where they're all just compact in there. Yeah, that's pretty much the sign. You just got most of it done. Like almost half of there. Okay, so after all that, push this forward. And this would mean like why like I feel like Sludge's transformation is so much more difficult to do on camera. So forward pinch these pieces together. And they should like all squeeze and tab together like so. These around. Store the rocket launcher inside his stomach. And store the rocket launcher inside his stomach. And there we have Sludge in his sauropod mode? I think it's called sauropod. Might be incorrect about that, but it's called sauropod. And yeah, there they are together. Small comparison. Firstly, before I end this review, with the articulation segment of Sludge. And it's probably the most you'll get of all the Dinobots, because you have a head rotation. You can both look up and down. You can open the mouth to reveal the blast port. Turn the peg, sorry. There now. It has a ratcheted neck. Or lower neck, technically. The front legs can be kicked forwards and backwards. Do have a technically not calf cut, but really tastes like a fast-ass calf cut. Very interesting. They can move up and down as well. In the back hind legs have the same duration as the arms. So yeah. But nothing at the tail, unfortunately. But yeah, that's it for Sludge and Slag. I do recommend both of these figures in general, especially if you get the new G2 versions, because those are much more readily available compared to these versions, unfortunately. If you really want to get the normal G1 style versions or colored versions, oh well, I guess. Hopefully they do get released again soon, because we did get release of Grimlock, obviously, so hopefully you do get release of both of them soon. Again, technically, because I believe Slag did get released like last year, so hopefully all of them get released at some point. Either in big multi-pack or not. Just generally, just hopefully at some point people will get them again. At a good price. But yeah, that's all for day 2 of the 12 Days of War. Like, comment, and subscribe, and hopefully I shall see you for day 3 of the 12 Days of War. Bye.